And we're going to go to the Zoom call. We're going to hit properties, client area, Zoom, okay. Hello. Okay. Treble, how's the sound? You can hear me fine? All right, during this webinar, I'm going to turn off my camera and my microphone. I am restreaming this because there was a technical difficulty on
All right,
on the
as
other
we
side.
said that we're coming on in just a minute. We're ready to start. There's always a minute pause time.
Nice.
Greetings and welcome. This is Sarah Flounders, and welcome to this week's Workers' World Party webinar. Our topic is, can the COVID-19 virus be defeated? And what can we learn from other countries? That's our topic. And it's because the COVID-19 pandemic is raging uncontrollably in the US. We must understand that it doesn't have to be this way. Many countries around the world, and above all, countries building socialism, countries with far less resources and technology, have been able to effectively combat the pandemic. They're using the tools of education, a planned economy, a national healthcare system to prioritize the health of their populations. How does this work? Is this really an effective strategy, or is it just a utopian dream? That's what we're going to be discussing tonight. Here in the US, the health and survival of working, of oppressed people is secondary to the profits for the ruling class, always secondary. The United States is the richest country in the world, has the most advanced technology, certainly military technology, and yet more than 170,000 people have died. Millions have lost their jobs, and many, many renters face eviction. But the stock market is soaring. The wealth of US billionaires has grown 637 billion during the pandemic. It's an incredible amount. Amazon reached 2 trillion. Now, the US COVID-19 explosion is completely going in the wrong direction and at rapid speed. And we're going to deal with this in much more detail later, but it reached 1 million on April 28th. It took 99 days. But it took just 43 days to reach 2 million. Another 44 days to reach 4 million. And it reached 5 million by August 9th. It's now 5.5 million. It will reach, at this rate, 10 million cases in October. 10 million. With
But I think we ought to play it
224,000
midstream.
people
Here you go,
expected
kids.
to die. It doesn't have to be this way. The cruelty of capitalism, of completely unplanned for-profit healthcare, of insurance for-profit companies and monopoly labs, they all have record profits, the highest recordings ever for them, while tens of thousands have died. So I'm next going to introduce Calvin Duchesne, who is my co-chair tonight, and then we are going to bring on some very powerful speakers who have a lot of information to share with you. Calvin.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm Calvin, and I'm with the Durham branch of Workers' World Party. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Tonight, we want to discuss specifically how China, Cuba, Venezuela, and Vietnam have organized to push back against the 2019 novel coronavirus, COVID-19. Workers' World newspaper has covered the accomplishments of each of these countries in battling the COVID-19 pandemic in a number of articles that are available online at workers.org. and I've written some of them. Go check them out, they're great. But we wanted to bring on some real experts from each of these countries to tonight's discussion. And these talks will appear in future articles, also in the Workers' World newspaper and on workers.org. If you are on Facebook, we will also be hosting a watch party tomorrow night for an opportunity for comments and discussion with the panelists. That'll be at 9:30 p.m. Eastern and 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. I hope to see you all there and we can hang out and chat. Tonight, each of our speakers will represent a unique perspective. From China, we have Su-Hin Lee with the China-US Solidarity Network and the National Immigrant Solidarity Network. Representing the perspective from Cuba, we have Rosemari Mealy from the New York Jersey Cuba Sea Foundation and the board of the IFCO and Pastors for Peace. From the Venezuelan perspective, we have William Camacara, the Bolivarian Circle Venezuela Solidarity Organization. And from Vietnam, we have Dr. Nhàn from the Viêt Solidarity and Action Network, the Vietnam Agent Orange Relief and Responsibility Campaign. They speak for 4 countries from which we can learn so much. Where to start? We decided to begin with China, where COVID-19 virus was first identified and where immediate action was taken internally and with detailed scientific information made available to the World Health Organization. Then we will move to Cuba. Cuba survived 60 years of US imperialist blockades and sanctions and has no rich resources except the power of human solidarity and science. Next, we will move to Venezuela. Venezuela has also been punished by US imperialist blockades and is now a country able to provide free healthcare for all. But it is also facing every kind of shortage. Nevertheless, the Venezuelan people have found creative ways to protect themselves and their population. Then we will return to Vietnam, which has the lowest rate of coronavirus cases in the world, a mere 25 deaths, and has taken advanced scientific and social measures while providing for the whole population. And just to correct an error, we had an earlier slide up at the beginning that listed there were approximately 26,000 cases in Vietnam. That was a mistake, that was a typo. There's today only 1,007 total cases have been detected in Vietnam and only 25 deaths. None of these countries has healthcare for profit like I do, or more specifically, do not have in the United States. Let's look at these concrete measures. Sarah? Back to you.
Thank you, Calvin. And we want to start with Su-Hin Lee, who is a longtime Chinese-American low-wage immigrant worker activist, currently working on community health projects. He's the national coordinator of the National Immigrant Solidarity Network and the Action LA Network. Lee Su-Hin is a Pacifica radio commentator and is also coordinates a China-US binational activist solidarity network. He is working on, and I think we have a slide on this, a new book which is coming out in September, just in a few weeks, called Capitalism on a Ventilator, the Impact of COVID-19 in China versus the US. And as I say, this is due for publication in September of 2020. Thank you. Lee Su-Hin will be traveling back to China August 24th for activism and medical work. So, Lee Su-Hin.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the great introductions. And I was a former Pacifica reporter. I'm going back to China this end of this week, Sunday night, if everything works out. I just went to did a COVID test this morning because right now there's a requirement. If you take a flight to certain country from China to, I think, Russia to some other country, you need to do a new COVID test within 120 hours of the flight, cannot be earlier, and then submit the records online. There's an apps now. I've been doing a body temperature test for last 2 weeks to submit to the system that prove that I'm okay. And hope everything okay. And then the test tomorrow got a result without any problem. Then I can take the flight. That's how has been China try to prevent any possible COVID patient trying to China and keep the safe, keep the country safe from the virus after the first appear outbreak on early this year. But there's one more thing, and if you remember, that was Wuhan, China. That was the when the first reported cases and become the epicenter, and then went to lockdown and successfully fight the virus completely within 76 days by early April. Everything that China declared the end of the COVID crisis in China. This week, probably I don't know if anyone you know, they also had a very major bold thing happening right now. That's the city has a very big, a beer and a food festival. Thousands of visitors going to the beer festival, drinking beers, and also a water festival on the water park. That's people have a music festival and also a pool party. That's what I know. It sounds like a very unimaginable right now on lockdown and crisis, and the rate is around the world is climbing up, and China can do it, and some Westerners disbelieve that might be a hoax, and then there might be a video from last year, even saying that thank you for what China has been doing to the world, and now China is enjoying, but also there's many net citizens commenting saying that Westerners should not blaming China. That's completely nonsense. We should, Western countries should learn how China has successfully fight against the virus. So why China can successfully combat the virus within 76 days? There's a couple major key words. That number one is strict quarantine, mass testing, building makeshift hospitals, and really no question asked top-down national coordination, logistics support, government and personal accountability and responsibilities. That's very important because that's not happening in the U.S. and international organizations such as the World Health Organizations trust in science and expert health apps and trace everyone, and quick development of national strategy, IT technologies, and also very simple, wearing masks from the beginning. That's how China successfully combat the virus. Put it on the 7 keywords: efficiency, science, coordination, commitment, people's war, cooperation, and effective leadership. That's how China successfully fight the virus, not just by pure luck, and people want to believe. And tens of thousands of volunteers, medical volunteers, because some of my friends in China went to Wuhan to fight the virus during February and March, 42,000 people. Even right now, since June, there have been scattered outbreak, small outbreak, like maybe 5-10 people, 20-30 people, and then the government can quickly stop the spread. Why? Because national coordination include the mass testing. For example, when there was a small outbreak in Beijing and in Dalian last couple of days, and Urumqi in Xinjiang, they're able to, within 2 days, 3 days, quickly build a makeshift test center that can capable to test up to half to 1 million people per day. And so that means a city of maybe 5 to 10 million people, the mandatory, everyone need to test. First, lockdown, no one can go out. That's very important. Then mass testing everyone, so that the apps will be tracing everyone if you're going to test or not. So 5 to 10 days, everyone can be tested and quickly identify contact tracing, identify who has been infected and by who the infected people has been meeting with, and then getting trace all these people, even people who have been meeting with the infected people without any show of symptoms or no COVID, they will require to quarantine at the special quarantine center, like a makeshift hospital, quickly built within 2 3 days. That is exactly what US has been missing. And if many scientists have saying that if they can do it from the beginning, that will be stop the virus very quickly. Other thing and is the logistics support. Ventilators. Ventilators has been stopped. It seems like right now regarding what they're talking about, all this like a project quickly building building up the capacity about making more PPEs and all these things, but the US still cannot do it. That's what we can see that even people, even when I go to supermarket now, it's much better than April or May when there's absolutely no way to buy a mask in the store in the US. China never had lack of PPE supplies from the beginning, except the first couple of days. And also, I mean, last couple of days, I went to want to buy a thermometer just for because I need to check my temperature every day for the health apps records. I couldn't find a thermometer. I need to go into online to buy it and wait for a few days. So those kind of things, small, very, very, very critical. So what's wrong with US? I just going to be very simple. Said there's a couple key words, and then that has been make the US disaster ending for the coronavirus: denial, mismanagement, ignorance, racism, corruption, chaos, xenophobia, anti-science, and finger pointing. Trump has been denying the existence of COVID and from the beginning, so we don't need to talk much about it. But you can from the chart the dates at the beginning, you can see that getting more and more faster. 1 million cases by within 99 days, 2 million by 43 days, and 5 million people within 17 days. It's not just getting faster and faster and faster, but each process, why there's a flipping much faster and faster, there's a dynamics from the failure of the medical emergency management to not lack of PPE to death on massive mismanagement on senior standard cost. 50 plus thousands senior citizens and the medical staff die in the medical center. Even across the street from my home, there's a small senior house had 20 people die. So those kind of so that's we can learn from China that how it has been successfully managed and fight the COVID, and U.S. shouldn't just keep. U.S. should also and Western world should learn about it, because right now the so-called the second wave is coming back again, and people are and there's a pushing for too immature reopening and causing the massive spike again, a special amount of young people, and then eventually going back to against will be infecting the old people, and another being 1,000 people has been dying, not just 50 to 70,000 people infected every day in US. That means what that means is US almost within 1 to 2 days, the infection rate has been equivalent to the entire what happened on COVID, all these reported cases in China, just 2 days. The overall in the last 8 months, and within 5 days, because every day so now US is 1,000 people dying, and from the COVID, 5 days, less than 5 days, the rate casualty rates in US is the overall first 8 months of the death rate in China. So that's staggering, and surprisingly, the biggest scientific country in the world supposed to say, and then they cannot come back the virus. So there's a lot to learn, not just from China, but from Vietnam and Cuba, how they successfully combat the virus. And it's not just finger pointing and blaming anyone, but all should be with international solidarity and find a better system and better experience that can save the people's life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lee Siew-hin. Speaking of international solidarity, our next speaker is Dr. Rosemari Mealy, a radio journalist, educator, and longtime activist, especially involved in years of solidarity with the Cuban Revolution, including living and working in Cuba. She is the author of Fidel and Malcolm X, Memories of a Meeting. Dr. Mealy is a member of the board of directors of IFCO, Pastors for Peace, and the New York, New Jersey, Cuba Sea Coalition, and the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Rosemari, tell us about the coronavirus response in Cuba. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. First, I would like to, I would like to thank Workers' World for the opportunity to participate in this webinar. COVID-19 can be defeated by recognizing the heroic people of Cuba, China, Venezuela, and Vietnam, which are all facing in some forms or the other sanctions, blockades, and strategies to sabotage every aspect of their socialist government's economic, social, and cultural policies. I know you mentioned earlier, Calvin, about the blockade against Cuba, but I'd just like to kind of reemphasize that the US embargo or blockade of Cuba has now entered into 6 decades of attempts to unsuccessfully wreak havoc on that nation. So we can't talk about Cuba and how it has been able to defeat COVID-19 without first acknowledging that for 60 years, it is the longest trade embargo in history. First, it was imposed in 1960 under Eisenhower, and at that point, there was a prohibition of exports of all products except foods, medicines, and medical supplies. But the Cuban embargo is, in essence, it's a relic of the Cold War, initiated by the capitalist West to undermine the socialist developments in the Soviet Union and China, and by 1960, Cuba. So notwithstanding the end of the Cold War with the collapse of the former Union of Soviet Socialist Republics in 1991, Congress in the years since, that's the US Congress in the years since, has continued to pass, and presidents have signed into law legislation strengthening the embargo. The Helms-Burton Act is unquestionably the most draconian as well as the most controversial of the laws, and the embargo cannot be ended without congressional concurrences through legislation. Cuba is not isolated internationally and has survived and is supported by an overwhelming majority of the countries in the world. But despite the blockade during the global pandemic, Cuba has shown the way in confronting COVID-19. First and foremost, most of the trajectory of this pandemic, like all pandemics, is based on the overall conditions and organizations of the society. Cuba is a socialist society where from the very beginning of the triumph of the revolution, healthcare, education, and housing, and the protection of workers were built into the socialist constitution. Health is considered a human right. The country's healthcare system is one of the world's greatest contributions because the system operates both horizontally and vertically. By that I mean the delivery of healthcare is integrated in every community. There's a family doctor who lives over the polyclinic and with staff in the community. So you have a tertiary health system which was created and sustained throughout its revolutionary history. Cuba has a relatively high number of medical workers per capita. Officials says that there are currently about 90,000 in the country of almost 11.5 million. Decades, months, and weeks before COVID even arrived on the island, because of how the healthcare system is structured, the government and the entire healthcare system, including the scientists, knew where every person lived, who was at risk, what vaccines and medications they had, and by going door to door in every neighborhood, involving medical students and doctors, making home visits with nurses. And so they've had 6 decades of experiencing like no other country or health system. And they had the skills, they had the technology, the advanced science, and the human capital to deal with the combating the outbreak and the epidemic. Cuba has had the experience of first developing and using interferons to arrest a deadly outbreak of the dengue fever back in 1981. And that experience catalyzed the development of the island's now world-leading biotech industry. The protocol interferon, which was only one tool of many Cuba has played a crucial role in some of those previous outbreaks of epidemics, saving seriously ill patients. And so since the appearance March 11th of the first cases of COVID-19, the country has reported 3,408 cases. 2,794 people have recovered out of a population of 11.5 million. 526 people remain ill. And unfortunately, there have only been a total death of 88 people. There have been no fatalities since August 4th. So you compare this, for example, I was looking at some stats this afternoon to the state of Georgia, which has a population of 10.5 million people. They've had 4,849 deaths. 22,664 people have been hospitalized since February. And the current active total cases are 239,133 compared to Cuba's 526 who are still ill. The recovery rate in Georgia is 2%. The recovery rate in Cuba is 82%. Georgia has 455 times more ill people still with the virus. So in Cuba, the strength of combating COVID-19 is reflected in the will of the socialist government, its scientists and medical personnel, and its informed people. Contact tracing, people coming together, coordinating the storing of masks, the distribution of food to the elderly and physically challenged. And recently, when there was a spike of cases in the provinces of Havana and Artemisa, the country reinstated the curfew. So Cuba is leading the way to defeat COVID-19, not in a selfish or in its own self-interest. First and foremost, the country is a recognized world leader in the development of antiviral drugs and therapies for cancer, diabetes, and complications, and most recently for COVID-19, where more than 45 countries have requested the interferon alpha 2B. And one of the things I think is most important is happened this week. A few days ago, Cuba announced, quote, that the Central State Enterprise Management Group, BioCuba Pharma, reports having received permission to begin clinical trials of a Cuban candidate vaccine. It's identified as Finlay FR1, and that's to prevent COVID-19, and it's capable of producing a strong immune reaction to SARS-CoV-2 infection. So Cuba is one of the most prepared countries in the world, while it's also making major international contributions in many countries fighting the pandemic with the Henry Reeves International Brigade. And if I may close out by saying this internationalism has been exemplified right here at home through the IFCO partnership with the Latin American School of Medicine Scholarship Program since 1999. ELAM has trained over 35,000 doctors from 138 countries, including graduating 195 US trained doctors. So in a post-embargo world, United States hospitals and research institutions would have direct access to Cuba's drugs, its therapies, and doctors to potentially improve the standard of care for millions of citizens of the United States in the defeat of COVID-19. So we have a lot to learn because Cuba has set and is setting an example. Thank you.
Calvin?
That wasn't me. Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Rosemari Mealy. Our next speaker is William Camacara, a Venezuelan-American longtime activist.
Wait.
Oh,
Just a minute.
just a minute.
Let's just take a minute before and thank you so much, Rosemari Mealy. That was tremendous. I mean, we're learning so much, even when you think you know some of this. And I want to say for all the listeners, if you like what you're hearing tonight and you want to be part of building revolutionary struggles for change, we have a very simple sign-on form here. And if we could just show that for a minute, this is an opportunity for you to link up with us. I think this form is coming on, but maybe not. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nate, who's doing our background technical work tonight. This will give you an opportunity to fill out a form, be in touch with us, be in touch with revolutionary struggles around the world, and really with the building right here in the streets today. This makes a huge difference. So apply to join our lists. Let's hear from you. So next, and thank you again, Lee Soo-hin and Dr. Rosemari Mealy. We're really discussing racism in the US. We can't talk about other countries without talking about who's infected, who dies here. The racism of the anti-Asian attacks, the racism of the hundreds and hundreds, many thousands deported, 100 plane loads a week to Central America, many testing positive. The racism in the refusal to listen to oppressed and developing countries who are succeeding so well. And our next speaker, William Camacara, is a Venezuelan American longtime activist in New York City. William Camacara is a co-founder. He is a co-founder of the Bolivarian Circle, Alberto Llavero, New York City. He is an artist. He's a WBAI producer and commentator and a senior analyst fellow at the Council on Hemispheric Affairs. He's focused a great deal of attention on the impact of the US sanctions and blockade of Venezuela. And he is speaking to us from Valencia, the capital of the Carabobo state. Carabobo is located in the center south of Venezuela, about 2 hours from Caracas. So, William, please join us, and thank you.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you good.
Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for the World Party for this invitation. And it's great to see everybody because I have been here since the pandemic started. And so I have been the entire years in Venezuela. So I just want to start talking about what is happening right now with the COVID-19 in Venezuela. So we have right now in the country, we have around 36,900 people infected. Every day we are getting more than 1,000 people, new cases, more than 1,000 people. We are getting, so for everybody that has been checking and watching what has been happening in Venezuela in the last 2-3 months, probably it's a surprise to know that we have right now more than 36,000 cases of people infected with the virus. We have almost 300 people, close to 300 people that have died as a consequence of this infection. So, and it's a surprise to see that country that was almost controlling the entire spread of the virus among the population suddenly is getting more and more and more cases. And the only explanation for this situation is the economic warfare and the war that United States, together with Colombia, Brazil, and the neighborhood that is surrounding the country, have against the Bolivarian revolution. Colombia is encouraging all the Venezuelans that are living in Colombia, also the same thing as Ecuador doing, Peru, encouraging the Venezuelans to come back to Venezuela and to cross the border illegally. So basically, they are promoting the Venezuelans to come back in condition that most of them get infected. So when they get infected, some of them cross the border through illegal roads to Venezuela, and that made very difficult for the state to control the pandemic. For example, only through the points where the state have all the equipment to receive Venezuelan people that are coming back, that have medicine, that have doctors, that have all the medications, only to those points, around 1,200 people are crossing daily. But a big number of people are crossing through other points that the government is very difficult for the Venezuelan government control, because the border with Colombia is a huge border that is the topography is very difficult. Some areas are completely forests. Some areas are very difficult to access. So these people are crossing to those areas where it's completely difficult to control the population, the immigrants are coming back. So that's what Colombia is doing, and all these allies from Colombia, including Brazil. Brazil and Colombia are the most infected countries in the area, in the continent. So that means that we are getting a lot of coronavirus, from Colombia. We are getting not only coronavirus from Colombia, but also we're getting paramilitary drones. We are getting all kind of stuff to destroy the Bolivarian revolution. The government has been, the medicine is free. Anyone that is sick can get the treatment free. Anyone that is sick is immediately isolated and is sent into a special area where this person will receive treatment completely free. But the New York Times today, when the New York Times is talking about all this presence of militaries on the street that are looking for people that are infected, to take them from their community and taking them to areas where they can be in quarantine, the New York Times is basically saying that a different story, saying that Venezuela is basically using the military to oppress the Venezuelan people. And it's not talking about all the installation that Venezuelan government has been building for all the people that have been infected, and not talking about all the treatment and the money that the state has been spending to help most of the Venezuelans that have been suffering from this pandemic. So they base their article only on the military issue. So it's very difficult for a country not only that is under attack for the United States from Colombia and Brazil, and in some Caribbean islands, but also it's very difficult for people that are in the United States sometimes to understand what's really going on here when you see the huge propaganda that's every day against the Venezuelan government. You will see certainly there is a chaos in certain areas right now thanks to the economic warfare from the United States. we don't have gasoline. A country that is oil producer doesn't have gasoline, doesn't have gas to cook, doesn't have gasoil. So it's a very difficult situation for a lot of people here. But you don't see huge protests that you are able to watch in Chile, or you don't see huge protests that you are able to see in Bolivia, or you don't see a huge amount of people against the government that you have been able to see in Colombia. However, you can see that in the last polls of the Interlace, saying that Interlace is a poll agency, that it's a right-wing poll agency, and they say that almost 75% of the people are completely upset about the sanctions, and they feel affected by the sanctions imposed by the United States against Venezuela. So people know really why we are facing this situation right now. It's very difficult, for example, to understand these numbers of cases. Not only Caracas, for example, only Caracas just yesterday had 200 new cases. 200 new cases in the city have the virus in the entire area, in the entire city. In every state is almost infected. And it's infected because, as I said before, a bunch of Venezuelan people that went to Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Chile, they are coming back with the support of all those right wing in condition that most of them get infected, or some of them are already infected, and they're sending them back in a kind of bacteriological warfare against Venezuela. So the war against Venezuela right now is taking another level. United States is trying to create the image that Venezuela is the most infected country of coronavirus in South America. The New York Times already have been publishing some articles, and they have been putting the idea that maybe United States has to intervene militarily because the Venezuelan government have been unable to control the pandemic. That is the idea that right now they are trying to use to intervene militarily in the country. Just a few days ago, 3 huge oil ships were intercepted with more than 1 million barrels of oil that were coming to Venezuela. And that was, and basically the oil was robbed by the United States, as well as the gold that Venezuela had and the UK bank that was robbed by the UK. It's a war. This is not. It's too naive to say that this is an economic warfare. This is more than economic warfare. It's something that is terrifying most of the people. It's something that they want to basically destroy the country, and they have been creating conditions in the country to justify an intervention, a military intervention. So I just want to make a call for everybody in the United States to pay close attention about what's really happening here, and to pay not only, and to be alert and to mobilize, because the coming days are extremely important, because the United States want to intervene in the country before the National Assembly elections that are coming soon in November. They want to intervene because they don't want Juan Guaido will not be re-elected. He is not thinking even to run. So they will be supporting someone that doesn't have control of the army, doesn't have control of any office in the state. And that's the situation that they will be facing in a few months. And that's what they don't want to face. They want to organize a coup d'etat. They want to overthrow the government before this coming election. And for that reason, I really We really appreciate it. Everybody and support Venezuela in these days and organize around the Venezuelan and organize to be alert that nothing happened before the elections that is going to take place in Venezuela. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you guys.
Thank you very much, William Camacara. It is so inspiring to hear about the resistance of the Venezuelan people to US imperialism and hear about the value of solidarity we can have here, especially in the United States. We're all very inspired by your words. I would like to remind everyone that you can put your questions for the panelists in through the Zoom link with the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. At the end of the speakers, we'll have a time for questions, and we'll try to answer them later in this program. We are now very honored to introduce another longtime activist for Vietnam. Dr. Nhàn is a fellow at the Center for Vietnamese Philosophy, Culture, and Society at Temple University and Medical Language Processing at New York University on Linguistic String Project. Nhàn is a co-coordinator of the Vietnam Agent Orange Relief and Responsibility Campaign, and he is currently a member of the new Viet Solidarity and Action Network supporting Black Lives Matter and an honorary board member of Mekong NYC. And I believe we're going to begin with a video in this case.
Okay. Something's going on here. There we go.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today on this panel. Tonight, I'd like to talk about Vietnam experience in combating COVID-19. The first case of COVID in Vietnam was on January 23rd. Between then and early July, we had about 200 cases and no deaths. Now the second wave of new strain of COVID started on July 11. Vietnam has recorded 1,007 cases with 25 deaths. Some cases were related to long-term illnesses from Agent Orange toxin of the US. This page is the official Ministry of Health instant reporting. Data are submitted directly from local hospitals all over the country and it appears as is. Vietnam is a country of more than 97 million people, so 25 deaths is about 2.57 per 100,000 of the population. The United States is a country of 331 million people, and there has been more than 177,000 deaths, which is about 5,287 per 100,000, or 2,075 times proportionally bigger than Vietnam. Around July 11, the second wave of new COVID-19 was and still is centered in Da Nang, with the largest city in Vietnam, where buried the largest dump of US Agent Orange chemical warfare and a major tourist destination and transit city for foreign workers. First and foremost, the dedication to defeat COVID-19 with a priority on saving lives. Early on, the Prime Minister of Vietnam declared that the entire country focused all of its human potential, economic and technical capacity to end the pandemic. They called it a campaign like campaigns Vietnam fought to win the national liberation. The slogan, like you see at the end of the video, Vietnam dare to win, dare to beat the coronavirus. Vietnam followed a socialist-oriented market economy. With COVID-19, the Communist Party of Vietnam applies socialist values to overcome the weaknesses of the market economy. The parties plays a key leading role in setting the policy and the strategy for mobilizing the party member from grassroots to provinces to national level to develop, explain, and implement it. The mass organization involved are the Vietnam Fatherland Front, the Vietnam Women's Union, the Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Union, the Vietnam Farmers Union, Vietnam General Confederation of Labor, the Vietnam Association for Victims of Agent Orange Dioxin, and many other mass organizations, including the Army, leap into action to organize their members. There are broad networks to disseminate information on COVID-19, centralized and instantly online by Ministry of Health, and to take part in the public health campaigns. The party and the government did a materialist analysis of COVID, of where and to whom it was being transmitted, and how it could be fought. They took into account the real condition of Vietnam and the impact of those conditions would have on the strategy. Vietnam also learned from experience of earlier SARS and avian influenza pandemics. So Vietnam decided to focus on stopping the outbreaks before it spread widely, using contact and community tracing, testing where available, and massive public education and outreach program. In the area where COVID-19 spread, Vietnam shut down non-essential businesses and schools. In neighborhoods with a high incidence, they were placed under strict quarantines. They very early on developed a comprehensive system of contact tracing using community model watches that extended down to the grassroots level. This is important. In the urban neighborhoods and rural hamlets. Everyone has access to treatment, whatever their financial status. And those who were quarantined had the needs met by the government, mass organization, or their neighbors. Masks and PPE were available to medical people, to essential workers, and to ordinary people. Information and cultural workers were mobilized to educate, update, inspire, and mobilize the people to fight COVID. From the colorful banners on the street, to announcement on TV, to daily briefing by the Prime Minister and city leaders, what was conveyed was clear, practical, consistent, and compassionate. Everything I just described has been covered by international press. What has not been a focus, and what is in fact most crucial to Vietnam's success, is people's power and socialist democracy in Vietnam. This was described by Exemplar in global health as a strong whole of society approach, engage multi-sectoral stakeholders in decision-making process, and activate cohesive participation and, of appropriate measures. This is human protagonism in socialism. And this is what made the difference in Vietnam's ability to do so well in fighting COVID-19. In response to COVID-19, Vietnam has an international focus as well. Cuba and Vietnam has participated particularly strong cooperation. Cuba and Vietnam a team of medical experts and thousands of vials of antiviral drug, interferon alpha 2B. Vietnam recently donated 3 tons of medical equipment to Cuba, including rapid test kits, masks, and protective suits, along with 5,000 tons of rice. This aid was given not only to the government, only by the governments, but also by the people-to-people donations. Vietnam also helped other countries suffering from the pandemic, even sending donation of PPE to Europe and the US. I think you can see how differently socialist Vietnam managed the COVID-19 crisis from the US. In Vietnam, people's level of confidence in the Communist Party and in the government has been strengthened by the achievement of the campaign to defeat COVID-19. People feel a strong sense of pride as a country has come together to support everyone and to do what few other countries have been able to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that uplifting example of what an effective socialist response to COVID-19 can be, and how it can save so many lives, and how ultimately it's so easy. As we have been saying, COVID can be defeated. So thank you, Dr. Nhàn. Thank you for sharing those thoughts, and thank you for sharing those techniques that hopefully we can apply around the world to save millions of lives. Just want to add from a technical perspective that tonight's program, oh, sorry, I thought I heard a sound. Okay. I just wanted to add that tonight's program will be available on YouTube, Facebook, and the talks will be in print at workers.org. All of this work is being done by a totally volunteer staff. I am a volunteer. Everyone here is a volunteer today. But in this capitalist country, it still costs money to be online, to be in print, to maintain this Zoom webinar license. So we have a way that you can support this effort. I'm a young person. I really like Venmo because that's what all of my friends use. You can support Workers World today by Venmo at workers.org/donate, where you can see all of our great articles. And then we also have a Workers World Party Patreon. Please make a donation if you consider this valuable information so that we can continue to provide the valuable services that we're trying to provide to the working class and the oppressed throughout the US and around the world. You can also subscribe to have articles sent to your inbox daily at workers.org, where we maintain all of our newspapers and where the talks from tonight will be presented in a text form. Thank you so much. And I think it's time to move to Sarah for the Q&A. And this is how you can sign up for the workers.org updates. So check that out.
Thank you, Calvin. Thank you to this wonderful, wonderful panel. And it's actually exciting in that everyone was so on time, on target, that we can, I think, do about 25 minutes, a half hour in the Q&A. And that is great because we have a lot of questions that I don't know if we can even begin to touch on them. And we are going to also do a Facebook, discussion tomorrow night at 9:30. So link to us then 9:30 Eastern time. We're going to continue this also with producing the videos. Let me touch on the numbers are important. We showed a slide at the beginning of the program, and I just wanted to pick up on a point that William Camacara made on U.S. propaganda, where they will highlight the difficulties that a country is having. Venezuela, where there are 35,000 cases of COVID, but they won't ever compare that to Brazil, where there's 3.5 million cases. That means 100 times as many COVID cases in Brazil as in Venezuela, right next door. Or in Colombia, more than 10 times as many cases as in Venezuela. So there is a real struggle to bring the numbers down in every one of these countries, down further yet. And yet you won't see that in the US media. That's why alternative media is really needed. Now, I want to ask any of the panelists this opening question and then we're addressing other questions. But here in the New York, New Jersey area, where 10 times as many people in the New York, New Jersey area have died as the total number in China, Cuba, Venezuela, and Vietnam, 10 times as many. And now tens and tens of thousands are facing eviction. That's a new threat, homelessness. So can we discuss what it means in each of these countries where there was a freeze on rent and credit card payments? Because in each of these countries, it is already illegal to just evict and foreclose people, to throw them out of their homes. So that shows a stunning difference even in the values every day, not only in times of COVID, but on what people have economic rights to. So if there's any of the speakers here who want to address that, because it so impressed us, the measures that these countries are taking to immediately say, don't worry about the rent, don't worry about the credit card payments, and you will be provided for, versus the huge insecurity and now the threat of evictions here. So for anyone on the panel who is interested in addressing that. And if not, we'll go on to another question.
This is Rosemari. Yes, I would just like to comment on the Cuba situation.
You can turn on your video too.
Okay. Cuban workers are still being paid. People, as I mentioned in my presentation, there's a real there's a real concerted effort to ensure that people's the ration cards, that people are getting the basics that they need, even though there are shortages. And I really love what the brother from Vietnam said, that because of Cuba's international, the solidarity that's been expended to Cuba from all over the world, there've been all kinds of donations and what have you. When the U.S. government stopped, and I'm veering off just a little bit, but I'll bring it back. When the U.S. government blocked Cuba's ability to purchase the ventilators, Cuba received voluntary shipments, and as a matter of fact, they've made their own ventilators. So that's something that's very important. People are still working. If you're attempting to email or to try to contact to Cuba in the minimum way that you can do, emails might be a bit delayed in getting there because people are working from home, just like people are working from home here. And so there's this concerted effort to, it's a difficult situation, you know, with the rationing and with the fact that, that, you know, people don't have, you know, the blockade created a terrible situation in the first place. And so it's very difficult on the people, but you know, the Cuban people are resilient. And so in terms of laying people off, denying benefits, healthcare is still available. The schools, of course, are not open, but they have a national a television, educational television system where here we're struggling with trying to allow people to learn how to use the internet or Zoom to do online learning. Well, this is something that the country has in place to begin with. So unlike here, as you said, people are being kicked out, rent is not being paid, people are going to be homeless. I can say that in socialism doesn't work that way. It's an attempt to provide the needs of the people, even in crisis and emergency. And Cuba is, because for 60 years, they've had to sacrifice in anyway. And so this is just an additional burden, quote unquote, that we would view. But the leadership, you have a leadership that's providing direction every day at noontime. You can tune into Cuban television, and there are updates from the Ministry of Health with the doctor explaining how many, you know, what are the cases, and you're getting this coordinated day-to-day information. Food distribution is being coordinated over in every province on the island. So it's a contrast in compared to what we're experiencing here. But then again, a socialist economy, even one that's in the midst of a 60-year-old blockade, there is an attempt to carry on, you know. And I think it's much like what the Vietnamese people are saying, that this is like it's a war, and they're, you know, the people of Cuba, as I said, are resilient, and they're moving in that direction. But at the same time, a lot of exciting things are happening, just like I said. You know, they're creating a new vaccine, and they're developing in the midst of this 60-year-old blockade. And I'm not saying that there are problems. I mean, right now with on the advent, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, with the rise in some of the cases, I mean, there's a concerted effort now to really encourage people that you have to take more responsibility, wearing your mask, social distancing. And if you read the Granma newspaper, there's some incredible debates going on regarding the question of how do you challenge people who want to maintain a kind of individualistic approach, as we see here in this country. How do you deal with those people who don't want to adhere to what's going to be in the best of the whole, not your individual needs?
Hi, I'd like to say something about Vietnam. About 10 years ago, there was an attempt by the city of Da Nang, which is now in the hotspot for COVID. The Da Nang has a slogan that nobody among the 5 no's, there is nobody. One no was nobody is homeless. It was attempting to use the Vietnamese constitution, which declared that all lands belong to the people and managed by the government, by the state. And so Da Nang was able to accomplish that in 4 or 5 years, because land belonged to the people, not to private ownership of business and company, and especially foreign companies. And the slogan of the Ho Chi Minh City is a city of care, and caring for the people is one of the slogans. And during the pandemic, first round and the second round, people was creating a free rice donation for people who need rice to come and pick up every day, and free lunch and dinner for people who need them. So if you have a policy of quarantine of people who are hit by COVID, and you don't have a home for a person, then you are in trouble. So the socialist definition of Vietnam, socialism is land belong to the people, which allowed Vietnam to find place for these people to stay. That is one of the key issue that the Vietnamese American come to visit Vietnam, who are organizer in the U.S. to fight against landlords and for renters of home in the U.S. And they found it amazed by Vietnam achievement.
Thank you so much for those responses. I had an additional question prepared and that we've also seen in the chat that I wanted to specifically direct to Lee Siew-hin about the accuracy of reporting these numbers. We've talked a lot tonight about the number of cases in different countries, and I was wondering if you could shine some light on the comparative accuracy between coronavirus numbers as reported in the US versus, of course, the United States has many allegations about the reporting in China and in other socialist governed nations.
Thank you. If anyone has been in China during the outbreak early this year or now, then you know the contact tracing is a very, very comprehensive work. That's down to the person. So there's a couple things extremely different. And number one is everyone needs to be signed in to sign to do it. So that's down to the person. So each make it simple. Each neighborhood, they have a neighborhood committee as a government-run organizations, and they will be have all this list of residents, and then so you are basically just make it simple saying that you cannot escape if you everyone on the list of they know who living there. That's how it's start from the bottom. So when you got infected and then the numbers are very fast, they can trace fast. That's at least a number will be very accurate, different than US. That's the critical part. Is the contract tracing is not really down to the person and follow up. So you could be waiting for a few days or even a couple weeks before you can basically follow up everyone. So like so China can able to tracing everyone because they have the technology, the apps, and also the government mobilization. So everyone have been counted. That's unimaginable. That's somehow that's in the U.S. it can be imagined because down to the person, and you might not even know the across the street who's living. That's and also openness and accountability. The problem in U.S. has been the openness and accountability, and the Trump and the right-wing Republican has been sabotaging the counting. So that's why that's when the disease keeps spreading, and then the U.S. cannot count it, and then there's lots of cover up on the number and being at least the being multiple medical journal has been indicating that U.S. has been undercount at least 20% most of the time.
Thank you so much for that insight. It's so difficult to just keep track of how well other countries are able to respond to this from here in the belly of the beast, as it were. So I appreciate that.
Like I was reporting, Vietnam use the party cell in order to deal with contact tracing, which is more effective than any means. Because at the beginning we were trying to pull up some idea how to do contact tracing, and Fibonacci number is one of the means to use mathematics to find them. The best mathematics is is of course is sell the party sell at grassroots level, and wherever people return home, then we know right away. They know right away, and that's number one. Number two, they were trying to do a test in March when there was no death and very few cases of infected people. They released people from the hospital to and they call it to release the chicken and chase them and see whether they go. And they found it the best way to do was still sell the party sale at the grassroots level. And wherever you happen, then you have to report it correctly. So number three, when on July 30th, when the first case happened, the newspaper, because Vietnam has free internet, and there was a lot of people reporting the first case. So the party says that the best is to be transparent and to overcome the rumors. To stop rumor is most important. So transparency is that means that every hospital who receive COVID and party cell who receive who knows people who have infected, then report it directly to online to the Ministry of Health, and that's why you have an online instant reporting from the health department. Many other international press already confirmed this.
I think what's interesting. That's Doctor. That's really interesting because there's some comparisons there in relationship to Cuba. But I think one of the interesting things that I pointed out in the beginning of my presentation was the role early on and even now that medical students play in doing these house-to-house meetings, finding out if anyone is ill, if you have any symptoms, and everybody who's tested positive on the island is hospitalized. And I think that's an important point. And then anyone who's suspected of carrying the virus, they're put into to these local isolation centers. They're quarantined for 14 days. And I mean that's been quite significant, you know. And also if someone is traveling, say, from one province to the other, you know, they're stopped and they and they're sent to an isolation center if they tested positive. So these are ways also that the country has been able to minimize the rate of infections. And by the way, most of the infections that came in early on came through tourism, and then from there it spread to the island.
I want to forget to mention about because you're asking accuracy in China. I want to counter what's the Western media saying, because that's internet and media in China are reporting every day from day one. So it's not like not talking about, it's a bombardment of the numbers ranging from like the social media from WeChat to TikTok. There's a whole TikTok channel and WeChat channel, just dozens every day, just reporting, and with chat. And even right now, when I use a Chinese app and many news app, then the top that automatically has all these COVID updates and all these things. So also the national news and newspapers. So it's not like you're hiding something. It's just getting even bombardment. I can say the bombardment amount of information every day from Chinese media, from the print, website to TV. You cannot escape. So there's nothing like a secret about, and it's more than like far more than US. Right now in US, unless you really want to take a look at it, it's not necessary you can see that amount of information. That's not what Western media is not talking about. seems like that we're hiding. It's in China. You just cannot hide. It's not just transparency, but bombarding amount of information every day. And in US, even I'm reading everyday newspaper and all this, but majority of people on my neighborhood don't even know about the how seriousness of the COVID in the US, and not even know that many people don't not even know, even me. Not until recently, I was surprised that didn't know that just right across the street from my apartment, probably 200 feet from my apartment, the senior center had over 20 people die, and still right now there's no official news and all these things. It just seems like some kind of like a urban legend or something. That's how different it is in China. That's impossible because it will be immediate on the news everywhere.
Thank you so much. I have a question also for William Camacara. We're really learning so much here. And as we said, this will also be available on YouTube, on Facebook, on a Facebook watch party tomorrow night at 9:30 on the Workers' World site. And the talks will be printed. But William, just a question. Now, 4 years ago, Venezuela spent about, well, tens of millions of their oil dollars on building neighborhood health clinics, every neighborhood well stocked with medicine, up-to-date tests. And now with the US and Britain, who stole Venezuela's gold, have blocked the oil sales, the sanctions, it is a question of, can Venezuela really feed the population a healthy diet with the urban micro farms and other such emergency measures, along with the social distancing, along with things like that? Are the urban farms an option for people to maintain their health?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Yes, there is a lot of people. Yes, the government has invested a lot of money in the countryside, especially in small farms. Millions of dollars were basically invest in the countryside. But people should know, for example, I have an article here from July 16 from, this is from Espectador. El Espectador is a newspaper from Colombia. The title of the article is Police Seize 11 tons of meat and fish from Venezuela en el departamento of Santander Department in Colombia. This is July 16, 2015, El Espectador from Colombia. Another article here from Colombia. This is the fight against cattle smuggling in Colombia. According to Fedegan is the huge organization that unites all the producers of meat in Colombia. Between 2016 and 2018, more than 4 million cattle were smuggled into Colombia, representing an economic impact of more than 8 billion. So there is another here. The other exodus from Venezuela to Colombia, meat. This is another newspaper, Semana, from Colombia. I just got newspaper from Colombia talking about the smuggling of food to Colombia. So yes, Venezuela is not producing enough. Yes, we can say that. But the reality is that a big amount of food is going smuggled to Colombia. And it's because most of these big landowners, most of these people that have big, huge land are working very close with the government of Colombia and are trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government. But yes, despite everything, there are some very significant signals that despite everything, the food production has been increased in the last 6 months. in the country. And President Maduro has been investing a lot of money in the countryside, and they have been supporting small family farms all over the country, what is called in Spanish conucos. So, and they also have been creating different kind of network around the country of and working very close with the peasant movement. Um, and look, the production has been increasing very significantly in the last, I would say, 6-7 months. Uh, but again, the smuggling of food still is there. They're still taking a lot of stuff from Venezuela. Even I have another article here from Colombia that said that the smuggling at the border with Colombia leave Táchira without products, cigarettes, meat, coffee, rice, vegetable, water, gas, and gasoline. This is coming from El Colombiano. This is a newspaper from Colombia. So, and the economy warfare is real for those people that don't believe that we have facing economy warfare. But despite that, as I said, the food production has been increased in the last 6 months. And not only that, it's something that you can see all over the country. You can see it a lot of vegetables, you can see it a lot of milk, you can see that the country is producing more and more and more. The other issue is that, and this is another issue related more to COVID-19 that is impressive for Venezuela, that is a country that is under a huge blockade from the United States, is that until now, more than 1,700,000 people have been tested with the coronavirus. That represents more than 56,000 people per million of people in the country. That's a lot. That means that every day a big amount of people are getting testing. And not only that, I have a niece that he got the corona, he got the virus. And he basically went to one of those medical centers that were built by Chavez years ago. And basically they did immediately the test to him. And he is right now in quarantine, isolated from my family. So he is in another place, he is connected with us. Those places have Wi-Fi, they are able to connect through their phone to anyone. They have also public cell phone, public phone. They also have everything that they need free. The treat meals, they have all the medication. They have, what I understand, because he's sending pictures, is that he have TV, he had Wi-Fi, and he have some games and the TV, so he can, play around with his, with the TV. So this is what's really happening here. This is what's really happening. And what really is concerning is that this coming election, that's for the National Assembly, United States is trying to intervene in Venezuela and to also disturb the Bolivarian revolution.
Thank you. Thank you so much, William Camacara, and thank you to each of the panelists. This is a wealth of information. What we've learned tonight, I just can't say enough of how important this is. And in the months ahead, as the conditions here become much, much worse, and they will, and we've seen the measurements, the reports, 10 million and growing, already at 5.5 million cases in the US, worse than anywhere in the world. We will continue to discuss this. We were asked an important question tonight: is a vaccine the only option? Is this our only hope? And I just felt every panelist showed what's possible right now. Right now, when you look at Vietnam with only 25 deaths, and you look at the figures in the US, we all need and want that vaccine, yes, but we should not consider we're defenseless. It's the profit system that makes us defenseless. So join us. We're back here in 2 weeks for the next Workers' World webinar. Please link to us. If you want to join the Facebook watch party tomorrow night on the Workers' World Facebook, please join us at 9:30. And also, we want to urge you to tune in to a very interesting national united webinar with about 25 different organizations. It's taking place on Sunday, August 30th. That's next Sunday at 2 p.m. And it is a webinar after the DNC and the RNC addressing it, saying we can't breathe. We got to keep it in the streets against racism, evictions, and war. That it is the people's movements that have the power to make the real changes we need. And it's where we place our confidence. So you'll see messages for that. That is going to be Sunday, August 30th at 2 p.m. After the DNC and the RNC, these extravaganzas. And yet there's no mention of free needed health care for all. An end to racist killer cops, not mentioned. So those are the things we want to address. And I thank you for everyone who joined us here tonight. We're going to stay in touch. We're going to stay in the struggle. Thank you again to Dr. Rosemari Mealy. Thank you again to Dr. Nhàn, just to tremendous information on Vietnam. Thank you to William Camacara for the information on Venezuela. Each of these programs, to Si Hun Lee, we thank you and we wish you good travels, leaving 4 days from now to return to China. I'm sure you'll have exciting reports and we'll be able to link into you there, and information on this forthcoming book, Capitalism on a Ventilator, is coming out in September when you're in China, and we will be pushing it here. So to everyone, we couldn't begin to touch all the questions, but we will take them up as much as we can in the period ahead. So stay strong, stay in the struggle, link to us, link to each other. Let's really build the kind of change that we need here to survive.
Nice. Nice.
Build a workers' world.
Build a workers' world. Build a workers' world. Build a workers' world. Oh, it has been okay. That meeting has been ended by the host. All right, I'm going to stop the streams. I'm going to keep the Twitch stream going for just a minute, but I'm going to stop all the other ones on the restream. Thank you for tuning in.